Picture a box. You know something about boxes, don't you, John? What if I told you that somewhere on this island, there's a very large box, and whatever you imagined, whatever you wanted to be in it, when you opened that box, there it would be. What would you say about that, John?
The first time we hear the mention of the magic box is in Season 3 episode, The Man from Tallahassee. Benjamin Linus vaguely describes it to a skeptical John Locke as being a box that can manifest certain things into reality. It's a form of mind over matter. The literal implication of his statement is that a person could theoretically manifest their innermost desires and wants simply by thinking of it. But this box could also mean that your subconscious could unintentionally manifest your fears and weaknesses too. If this idea sounds familiar, it's because it most likely was inspired from Michael Crichton's novel, Sphere, which saw a team of scientists discover a giant sphere beneath the ocean in a spaceship that allowed them to manifest their inner desires and fears. It follows that the Lost Writers' Room might try to riff on this idea a little bit because they coined the term, Crichton Island, in the early development of the show. In other words, they used the works of the author as an inspiration for some of their sci-fi concepts. The show developed far beyond these initial influences, but the magic box is very much a tip of the hat to where much of this mythology originated. The end of the episode sees a deeply perturbed John Locke come face to face with his estranged father. Ben teases the idea that Locke brought Anthony Cooper to the island, somehow by simply willing him to be there. Even if it was unconsciously so. It seems like the magic box might very well be a real thing. Or, so we are briefly led to believe. But Ben and Locke have this exchange later on in Season 3 episode, The Brig.
Why do you think you brought him here?
The magic box.
Okay, Ben, how about you show me the...
Magic box is a metaphor, John. I can't show you anything until you can show me that you're ready and willing to be one of us.
So, what is the magic box? Is it real, or is it metaphor? Consider the power dynamics in the scene in which Ben first brings up this tantalizing mystery. Ben is threatened by Locke's specialness, especially his communion with the island. Locke can walk again because the island healed him. But Ben is in a wheelchair because the island did not pay him the same courtesy. And Ben's people can see that. This is why he didn't get his cancer treated on the mainland. Having a tumor on his spine is a sign to the others that the island no longer wants him to be leader. After all, people get better on the island. They don't get sick, unless it's for a reason. Like Jack's appendix rupture in Season 4. The surgery from which allows him to survive the stab wound from the man in black long enough to return to the cave and recork the source in the end. Everything happens for a reason. But, I digress. If Ben traveled off-island for surgery, that would have created several issues. The first is that it would leave a power vacuum that John Locke might end up filling in his absence. This is a suspicion that proves to be correct as it turns out. The other issue is that Ben wants to show his people that he is the right leader for the job and that the island still wants him in power. And he harbors this belief, not purely out of hubris, but because of a very specific sign.
Do you believe in God, Jack?
Do you?
2 days after I found out I had a fatal tumor on my spine, a spinal surgeon fell out of the sky. And if that's not proof of God, I don't know what is.
To Ben, if he can get Jack to perform the surgery successfully, then it might prove to his people that this was all part of the island's plan for him to get well and remain in power. However, the truth is, his time as leader is over. And his cancer was part of the chain of causality that would lead him to resenting John Locke, pushing the frozen wheel, and killing Jacob. Yet Ben desperately wants to cling to power. Who is he if not the king of the island? So, he needs to find a way to either undermine or eradicate John Locke. This is why, as Henry Gale, Ben toys with Locke's ego and vulnerabilities in The Hatch. It's why he makes the man question his faith in the button and the island. It's why he wants Locke kept far away from his people. So, by extension, the magic box becomes a way to mislead Locke. A way of saying, I have secret knowledge and you don't. I understand this place and you don't. Ben does imply that Anthony Cooper somehow magically appeared on the island via the magic box. That somehow Locke brought him there unconsciously. However, the reality of what happened soon becomes clear once Cooper explains things to Sawyer.
I'm driving down I-10 through Tallahassee when, bam, somebody slams into the back of my car. I go right into the divider at 70 miles an hour. The next thing I know, the paramedics are strapping me to a gurney, stuffing me in the back of an ambulance, and one of them actually smiles at me as he pops the IV in my arm. And then, nothing. Just black. And the next thing I know, I wake up in a dark room, tied up, gag in my mouth, and when the door opens, I'm looking up at the same man I threw out a window, John Locke, my dead son.
In other words, Anthony Cooper was extracted from the mainland on Ben's orders. He was ran off the road and whisked away by a clandestine team of others. This team was no doubt part of the same group that left the island on the submarine with Tom Friendly. Whilst Tom was recruiting Michael Dawson in New York for the Kahana freighter operation, another team was down south in Tallahassee, Florida, kidnapping Anthony Cooper. It is highly likely that Tom escorted an incapacitated Cooper back on the submarine to the barracks. This was the last voyage of the sub before Locke blew it up less than 24 hours later. We know Ben wanted the sub to be destroyed. It allowed him to renege on his deal with Jack Shepherd without being seen as doing so. But this is not the first time that Ben used other events to spin lies and form new narratives. Ben was clearly sensing that his time in power was at a critical juncture, especially with disharmony in the ranks among his people. Juliet was looking to lead a coup d'état against him, no doubt a result of his indirect murder of her lover, Goodwin. And with Charles Widmore rearing up his head again, and John Locke waiting in the wings, Ben was besieged on all sides. So, he needed to keep his people on a short leash. Hence, why he capitalized on the Swan's fail-safe detonation and used it as a cover to stop all communications to and from the island via the Looking Glass station. This was almost certainly in anticipation of Widmore's arrival. But it was also a cover story he fed to his people to keep them contained and in the dark. With the submarine destroyed and communications allegedly down, he could maintain a slippery grip on power. So, what does this mean for the origin of the magic box as metaphor? Why would Ben even bring such a concept up if it were not a real, tangible thing? And does this metaphor apply to anything we actually see on the island? Well, Ben was operating within the show with a knowledge based on myth, half-truths, old traditions, and rituals. Hence why he misunderstood the true nature of the smoke monster. Sometimes he was following what he had been told through dreams. Other times he was basing his long-held notions on what Dharma had established through their research. The rest of his ideas were directly influenced by the practices and beliefs of the others. His magic box metaphor was mostly designed to make Locke feel less informed and in control. To use what little knowledge he had of the island and its secrets to undermine the resident man of faith. Ultimately, as we find out, Ben knew very little about how the island really worked, or what his own role was in the grand scheme of things. He hated the fact that Locke had such an intuitive connection to the island, and vice versa. Ben's metaphor was really the only way he could describe his limited understanding of a place that showed him impossible sights. And what remarkable sights he did see. Emily Linus, his dead mother, seemingly resurrected before his eyes. An ageless man who had been around longer than any other human being on Earth. An entity that resembles smoke and roams the jungle, killing anyone it judges to be unworthy of being there. An even more mysterious island deity capable of healing the sick and issuing specific commands from up on high like God himself. Indeed, the magic box was his only way of making sense out of this crazy place. Thematically speaking, the magic box represents the nature of the island's power to show you who you are. It can reflect the struggles and regrets from your own past. Or it can amplify your feelings about who you are now. More importantly, it can offer you redemption. The opportunity to follow a grander destiny that not only gives you a second chance to make the right choices this time, but to also give meaning to all of the wrong ones you made before. All of your suffering, and all of those struggles, now have purpose. John Locke comes to understand this when he and Sawyer have the following exchange in Season 5 episode, The Little Prince.
Why'd you turn us around then? You want to go back there?
Why would I want to do that?
So you could tell yourself to do things different. Save yourself a world of pain.
No. I needed that pain. Get to where I am now.
On a metatextual level, the magic box was a nudge and a wink to us, the audience.
That blank page is a magic box. You look at stories, you think, well, what are stories but mystery boxes? There's a fundamental question. In TV, the first act is called the teaser. It's literally the teaser. It's the big question. So you're drawn into it. Then, of course, there's another question, and it goes on and on.
Obviously, this style of mystery box storytelling has its downsides and its critics, but, perhaps, the writers were tipping their hat more towards the online community that had sprung up around the show between Season 1 and Season 3. A community that would speculate and theorize on everything from the nature of the black smoke, to translations of hieroglyphic symbols. Solving and working out Lost had become its own phenomenon, just as social media was emerging as a new way to interact with others on a large scale. We were creating and imagining our own meanings to what we were seeing on screen. Even now, years later, here I am, still doing the very same thing that I started way back in 2005. Obviously, we have more information now, and better context to understand the answers. But enough ambiguity was left within the show for us to continue talking about it. So, why does this matter when it comes to exploring the meaning of the magic box? Because the show is also about perception, and how our characters see the island. And how they see themselves in the context of both the past traumas and the present-day dilemmas. It's why the show begins with an eye opening, then ends with an eye closing. And why so many episodes used an eye-opening as a recurring visual motif. Because we are seeing things from the point of view of a particular character. Which means their perception of what was happening on the island might be very different to the perspectives of other characters. Sometimes a horse is just a horse. But it's what our characters make of that horse that becomes important. Just like how Mr. Echo and John Locke both looked into the eye of the smoke monster and saw totally different things. Again, this is a reflection of the audience as well. When Kate looks at this horse, she sees the horse that helped her escape police custody, just like some of the audience will see it. No matter how impossible or unlikely that might be. However, a more eagle-eyed viewer might look at this very same horse and see something more sinister. They might see the smoke monster, and manipulation. Maybe it is the man in black observing one of the candidates. Then again, perhaps this horse is nothing more than a black horse which happens to look like the one Kate remembers. A reminder of her past that triggers certain emotions and actions within her, that will lead to other actions. We know there are horses on the island. This one may have simply escaped its stable and now lives wild. There is a strong element of fate in play. The island is influencing character decisions to lead him to certain outcomes, but the idea that it is literally the same horse remains in the eye of the beholder. Some questions can't be answered to any certainty, while other questions don't need to be answered at all.
It's just a bore.
In this sense, the magic box means so much more than just another one of Ben's lies. It is the showrunner's way of communicating to us, their audience, that the show itself is the real magic box, in which we bring our own perceptions and interpretations to the narrative. We craft our theories about what is happening and imagine our own versions of the narrative, whether they be accurate or not. We fill in the blanks and create new meanings and ideas, whether originally intended or not. The only thing that comes close to being a quote-unquote real magic box is the flash sideways within the source, where the rules of reality, time, and the living plane no longer apply. It's a place where whatever you imagined, or whatever you wanted to be inside of it, will be there. The child you never had. The friend that you weren't going to leave behind again. The second chance at happiness together that you always deserved. The career that would make you into a better man. The old love you were able to let go of, in order to embrace the next. The worst choice you made that you got to make over again. And get right this time. The forgiveness that you needed from the people you hurt the most. The love you lost and found again. The favor you got to return to the mentor who once believed in you. And the faith you had that was finally rewarded. The flash sideways works as a literal version of the magic box for each person within it. In Season 1, the hatch was the magic box. And our theories had no limits as to what might lie within it. Every new season presented us with new magic boxes that gave us a chance to theorize about, and participate in, the show itself. Like no television show had ever really done before it. And like nothing has ever been able to replicate since. Many of the boxes were opened and we got to see what was inside. Some of us loved what we found, while others found only disappointment. That's the thing with magic boxes. Once you open them up, the mystery is over, and the magic is gone. Which is why we should embrace Lost for all of its perceived flaws and foibles, because it still gives us something to talk about years later. The magic box never needs to be closed as long as we keep talking about some of the mysteries that lie within. Thank you for watching. Please like, share and subscribe to see more. Until the next time, stay lost.